In today's show, the NBA has a plan to combat the scourge of load management, and it's going to have real impacts on the Portland Trail Blazers. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trail Blazers, your daily Portland Trail Blazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richman. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Feel wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Next week, we're back 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, beginning September 18th until friggin' July. We're back, y'all, 5 days a week. You are listening to the third and final episode this week as summer vacation here at the Locked On Podcast Network comes to an end. We're getting rolling again. Tell your friends about the program. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, the NBA Board of Governors voted today on a plan to end the scourge of load management. It's funny that the league has to make a rule that the league's setup incentivizes, but the league indeed has a setup that incentivizes teams to rest. And now the league is passing rules to make sure that even though you might be incentivized to do so, you can't. It's an 82-game season, and you got to play. I want to talk about all of that today. What are the changes in the load management rules, the impacts on the Portland Trail Blazers, and is this even a good idea? Is this a good plan, and how did we get here? So first, what are the rules? What are the rules? Before we talk about the impacts and sort of my opinion on how we ended up here and whether this is even a good idea. According to ESPN, Bobby Marks and Adrian Wojnarowski have the memo and the bullet points from the memo that was going to be voted on. I don't think it's officially been voted on. I think it's going to be voted on today as I'm recording this. And so while you're listening to this, it'll be in effect. That's how newsbreakers and newsbrokers work in this league. They aren't going to report stuff that wasn't going to go down. This is the reason it's out there is because the league is trumpeting it, and they're using Adrian Wojnarowski to play that trumpet. So this is how it's going to work, although I think I should say this isn't officially official. But here are the rules. Teams must manage their rosters so that no more than one star player is unavailable for the same game for rest purposes. A star player, according to the NBA, is any player that made an all-star team or all-NBA team in the 3 prior seasons. So guys can sit if they're hurt. If they're hurt, they can sit. But the problem is if they're the issue would arise if you are resting players on purpose because, say, you have a schedule loss. The Warriors did this. They played in Indiana. They had the end of a 7-game road trip. They played that next night. They played in Utah. They rested Draymond. They rested Clay. They rested Steph. They would be in trouble by the league standards because of that. They would be fined $100,000 for the first incident. They would be fined $250,000 if they were to do it again. And then they'd be fined $1 million more for each incident. So the first one, 1.25 mil, 2.25 mil, blah, 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 so on, so on. Like, and tacking on $1 million to as much as it happens. No one's going to violate this like 5 times. No. Someone might do it once, but because like you just have, the Blazers have a 7-game road trip this year, in fact. And it ends in OKC and then a back-to-back in Minnesota. 7th game of a road trip. They're on the road for 13 days, 13 days out. 7th game of a road trip, 2nd night of a back-to-back, traveling from Oklahoma City to Minnesota. Yuck. But if they were to, the only player who qualifies for this on the roster currently was Dame. If they were to rest Dame, like hold him out, that would be okay. But if they rest some sort of magical other all-star that they don't have, I guess Matisse Thybulle, he didn't make an all-NBA team, made an all-defense team. The Blazers wouldn't even come up for the Blazers. But if it would come up for another team that had multiple all-stars, multiple all-NBA guys, which isn't that many teams in the league anyways, they would be fined for it. So you can't rest multiple stars. You've got to ensure, according to the reporting from Bobby Marks and Adrian Wojnarowski, ensure that star players are available for nationally televised games and the in-season tournament games. Oh, Tuesdays and Fridays in November. Tune in, baby. The stars are guaranteed to be there for the in-season tournament games. Get excited. Teams must refrain from, and this is a big one for your Portland Trail Blazers, long-term shutdown or near shutdown when a star player stops participating in games or plays in a materially reduced role in circumstances affecting the integrity of the game. That's the language from Adrian Wojnarowski. What it means is you just can't shut a dude down at the end of the season when you're trying to lose on purpose. You can't just rest someone. More on that in a little bit. The Blazers have done this. They didn't really do it 2 seasons ago, but they did it last year, like for real. It was very clear they rested Damian Lillard, and it's not just the tanking. It's, the trade beef. We'll talk about that in a moment after we get through all of the rules. Teams must maintain a balance between number of one-game absences for a star player in home and road games, with preference for those absences happening in home games. This is a ticket holder thing. Okay, Giannis Antetokounmpo comes to your town one time a year. And that one time he comes because he's a Western Conference team. He's coming to Sacramento. You're so excited. Your kid, you bought your kid the fancy tickets because they love Giannis. You don't know how it happened, but you have an 8-year-old who loves Giannis Antetokounmpo. I see these 8-year-olds in the Rose Garden all the time, Moda Center all the time. But Giannis sits out because they played in Portland the night before, and now they're in Sacramento, second night of back-to-back. He's exhausted. The NBA does not want you to do that. They must maintain a balance. They want you to rest in Milwaukee because road teams only get so many shots at you. And finally, teams must ensure that healthy players resting for a game are, quote, present and visible to fans. So when Dame and Nurk and Ant and Jeremy Grant and all those fools are being held out because the Blazers have lied about injuries and are making them up whole cloth in order to lose games and acquire Scoot Henderson and fix the franchise, mind you. Those dudes got to sit on the bench because you paid your hard-earned money and you need to see those gentlemen in extremely expensive sweatsuits. That's like $1,000 matching sweatpants and sweatshirt. Sit your butt on the bench so the paying public can watch you. I'm laughing at these rules because they seem silly to me. How many teams have 2 All-Stars? It's like, the Celtics and the Warriors and specifically the Los Angeles Clippers, who are like the really seriously do this, and the Lakers. There's some high level teams, but like, for instance, the NBA champion Denver Nuggets will never be subject to these rules because they don't have a second All-Star, second All-NBA player on the roster. So they can rest Jokic whenever they want. They can rest Nikola Jokic whenever they want. I'm getting ahead of myself. It's a little silly. Okay, real quick before we talk about how this is going to affect the Blazers, because it absolutely is. A star, according to the NBA rules, is going to be an all-star or all-NBA player in any of the 3 previous seasons. It also, according to Bobby Marks, will include this season. Like if you make the all-star game this season for the first time, say Anthony Simons makes the all-star game for the first time, then he won't be able to rest, right? He will be subject to the rule. He will be able to rest, but not if he has an all-star teammate, right? He would be subject to the star designation. In 2020, Kemba Walker started the All-Star game for the Boston Celtics. So Kemba Walker played signed some short-term contracts, 10-day deals with Dallas last year. It's like, so Kemba Walker signs a 10-day deal to go back. Let's put him in a place with one other All-Star. He goes back to Charlotte. Okay, goes back to Charlotte. Frank Ntilikina turns his ankle. They need a backup point guard. They get Kemba back. Now they got Kemba and LaMelo Ball. If Kemba were to get, under my understanding of the rules, if Kemba were to get a DNP-CD, which would be a quote-unquote rest, like a did not play coach's decision, if he were to rest, would they be subject to a fine because Kemba Walker was an all-star in 2020? Like, Ben Simmons was an all-star in 2020. Mike Conley was an all-star in 2020. Yeah, the Timberwolves have 4 players that this applies to. There are some specific rules. If you're 35 when the season starts, you can get special treatment. If you have 34,000 minutes played, this is basically the LeBron James, Chris Paul rules. LeBron James, Chris Paul can rest. Everyone else, you gotta play, baby. Get out there and play. Okay, this is gonna have real implication for the Blazers. Both, like, in retrospect, there's some implication for the Blazers, and moving forward with Damian Lillard. The rule changes are going to have at least some real impact, or could have some real impacts on the Blazers. Let's talk about that real impact it could have in the second segment. First, let me tell you about Jace Cates. Listen, Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected, whether that's a natural disaster, whether that's a supply chain issue, whether that's pandemic-related stress, whatever that is. You should have the power to care for those close to you and for yourself, and that's why Jace Medical offers the Jace Case. The Jace Case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you peace of mind so that you're not just hoping that you have access to medication in emergency. Jace Case makes sure you have that medication in hand. Jace Medical is simple. They handle everything from the online evaluations to licensed pharmacy medication licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. So check out Jace Case. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jace Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using the code LOCKEDON at checkout on jacemedical.com. That's JASE Medical, and the promo code is locked on. That's Jace Case. Check it out. All right. So the rules about resting. The real deal, Holyfield, in terms of being specific, right? They have specific rules. If you break the rule, you're going to get fined or investigated and then fined, right? I am willing to wager no teams will come up against it. But if these rules had been in place as recently as last season, the Blazers would have felt the wrath of the league. Because you can't just have clandestine tanking now. At the end of last year, Damian Lillard was approaching maybe about a 15 games left mark to 18 games left mark, and he was asked at a post-game press conference. I believe I was there. I think they lost to the Celtics, got kind of thrashed by the Celtics. It's clear the season was going in the wrong direction, and someone asked Dame after the game, like, have you considered sitting out at the end of the year? And he openly said, yeah, at some point it's going to make sense. I don't want to do it, but at some point it's going to make sense. And Chris Haynes of Yahoo Sports reported, yeah, like in about 3 or 5 games, they're going to shut Dame down. Dame hits the 58 game mark, the number you need to qualify for the league statistical leaders, allow him to qualify for like the points per game, scoring leaders and stuff, and end up on the list at the end of the year. Hits that 58 game mark. The Blazers win in Utah. They shut him down. He doesn't play in the final 11 games of the regular season. But Dame had openly said he was going to stop playing. A reporter had openly said that the Blazers planned to shut Dame down, and then they shut him down. They shut him down with a calf injury. It was the same calf injury he dealt with some months ago in December, whenever that was. So that was April, so 5 months earlier. November's end of November, 5 months earlier, and there you go. There you go. He's out. But it was dicey at the time. It was clear it was exactly super obvious what was going on. And if these league rules had been in place, the NBA absolutely would have stepped in and said, I think you got to play him. Like, you got to play him. And, it's... Would it have materially affected the Blazers' outcome? Absolutely, right? Like, them losing the games they did and getting, having as many losses as they did and have it stack up the way they did got them below, worse record than Orlando, ended up in a way better lottery position than Orlando. Would you rather have Scoot Henderson or Anthony Black? The Blazers tanking and losing on purpose, incentivized by the league because of their lottery system, changed the direction of the franchise. It was incredibly important that they lose those games at the end of the year. It's incredibly important. So they stopped playing Shaedon Sharpe because it was incredibly important. But under these new rules, you wouldn't be allowed to do that. Now, in the previous season, when Dame was out with a season-ending injury and the Blazers didn't have players that met that criteria, then you can start resting guys. So it's okay to rest decent NBA starters and play 10 guys off out of nowhere, but you can't rest Dame. That's the rule. You can't rest Dame. And again, the Blazers don't have anyone on the team who meets this criteria, who would be an All-Star or an All-NBA. So over the last 3 seasons, so it would only come up with Damian Lillard. I cannot imagine a scenario where Damian Lillard is on the team after the trade deadline this year, but I can imagine it. Let me imagine it real quick. I'm going to take a moment. Oh yeah, I imagined it. That was amazing. He's still on the roster, baby. But like it seems pretty unlikely that he would come up in the sort of April games. And I think this is that particular rule is trying to curtail. It's just like play your dudes at the end of the year, make it an 82 game season. Even though, now this is an important note, the league just made it a 65 game season, right? They said you got to play 65 games to qualify for the All-Star team and qualify for all NBA awards and end of season awards. DPOY, 6 Man of the Year, that stuff. You got to play in 65 games. And there's if you sustain a season-ending injury, there's I believe Bobby Marks has the 62-game mark, and you have to play at least 20 minutes for them to count as a game. So you can't just like show up for 40 seconds and check out. But if you play less than 15 minutes and in 2 games, that can count as 1 game. There's like a lot of stupid criteria for you to get there. So I guess you could like limp out to get to 62 if you were, say, Jaren Jackson Jr. last year, who only played 63 games. You're pretty clearly the best defensive player in the league during the regular season, and you needed to hit that number, right? Like you get Triple J out there. How dare you have any type of knee troubles? Because then if you don't play 65 games, you only play 64. How would we know that you're good? They just got to shorten the season. It's obvious. They could also get rid of back-to-backs. Play 82 games, but get rid of back-to-backs. Seems like a lot of this is a travel night back-to-back. Get rid of this. But so the NBA said, okay, 65 games is the minimum, but we need you to play 82. It's like that's a month of games that basically are saying, yeah, well, you can miss about a month. Like you can miss 17 is a month and some change of games. It's like you can miss about a month and still end up being the MVP, but you actually have to play that extra month because we need you to be on TV and we need you to sell tickets. It's very important. Our broadcast partners, we're about to come up on a new TV deal, and our broadcast partners can't have you not on TV. The regular season needs to matter. You have to play. The other big one for the Blazers. So that I kind of got off track because I'm heated about bureaucracy, y'all. I'm like, take that, bureaucrats! It makes no sense. Lawless, make it lawless again. It would be better if the NBA regular season mattered, right? To me, it would be better if the regular NBA season mattered. But artificially trying to force it to matter seems wrong in the face of what we care about. The only thing people care about and talk about on the broadcast partners is rangs. We've devalued the regular season, and now we're making it artificially valuable by saying you got to play 80 games. Whatever. At least it'll be on TV. Congrats to Turner Sports and Disney. In any case, the big thing that's going to come up for the Blazers is the fourth bullet point here in the Woj and Bobby Marks reporting. Quote, teams must refrain from any long-term shutdown or near shutdown when a star player stops participating in games or plays a materially reduced role in circumstances affecting the integrity of the game. This is going to be a big deal. If Damian Lillard is on the roster on opening night, he's got to play. And I think participating in games or materially reduced roles. So like if a star player plays 35, I bet you get away with Dame playing 30. But it seems like if Dame's on the roster, and this always felt like it would be the case. If Dame was here, he'd play his normal 35 minutes and the Blazers would have to deal with it. There's kind of already a precedent for this, to be clear. When Anthony Davis was done in New Orleans and he was clearly wanted to go play for the Lakers, and they were finishing up the sort of back half of that season before they were going to trade him into the summer, and he was entering the final year of his contract and get traded to the Lakers for a whole haul. The Pelicans tried to just shut him down, right? They said, okay, well, we want to start losing. We don't want you to get hurt because we want to be able to trade you. And Anthony Davis said, no, I want to play. And the league forced New Orleans to play him. And it was this weird standoff where he would play some games during the week, but wouldn't play all of them. And this is sort of the precedent set for the Damian Lillard situation. It's why I didn't think there was a world unless Dame agreed to go home, which I don't think he would, agreed like that they would have this AD precedent where it's like, well, if he's on the team, you got to play him. Like that already existed. And then you add this new rule, which is that long-term or near-term shutdown or near shutdown or a materially reduced role, that is a violation. If Dame's on the roster, he's got to play. Or they got to fake an injury. Is Dame going to fake an injury? Is he going to do the Blazers a solid and fake an injury? Or is he going to show up to work and make it miserable for them? Even by playing hard, but just like, hey, I'm here and you have to deal with me being still here every day. Like, I don't think he's going to like sabotage the team. I think he's going to be like, I would still like to play for the Miami Heat, and he's going to score 28 points. And they're still like, he's not going to drag them to the playoffs, but they're going to be a little bit better than they otherwise would because Dame is very good at basketball. This has real implications. I don't think this like really changes like, okay, the Blazers have to take the Heat deal or whatever that is. I do not mean to imply that. I just mean that if Portland was hoping for a solution in which they could say, okay, we're just not going to play. We're just going to agree to sort of have Dame be here but not playing. DNPs, right? Here but not playing. And we'll go with the Anthony Davis route where he plays on Wednesday, but on Monday and Friday he doesn't play, and every other Sunday or whatever it is. So he plays, if they play 15 games a month, he plays in 6 of them. So, and then you find a trade in the first 30 games. He only plays 12 games. There you go. One, Dame's going to want to play because he's going to want to hit that 65-game mark to be eligible for awards. He's going to want to hit that 58-game mark to be eligible for statistical leaders. If you got to play 20 minutes, according to Bobby Marks, you have to play Dame real minutes. Like, this has a real implication. The Blazers are going to come up against it because of these league rules. It already seemed like that was the case, but if there was ever any doubt in your mind, the league made it very clear that it's not just the Anthony Davis precedent, it's the rule that they voted on today, Wednesday, September 13th. You're listening to Thursday, September 14th show. I appreciate you listening. So, I mean, you know what I think. But let's answer the question anyways. Is this a good idea? Is this a good idea? Plus, I got some news about the Blazers, sale of the Blazers, which it ain't happening. But let's talk about it in the third segment. Join me there, won't you? Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You're still listening to Locked On Blazers. We're still talking load management and the rule changes the Blazers, or the league, have voted on in September here, in the September of 2023, to go in effect immediately for the 23-24 season, and the real life implications on the Blazers. Going to end some sort of tomfoolery with not caring in April basketball games, which fine, whatever. I think. And more on that in a moment. And it's really going to impact specifically the Blazers and the Philadelphia 76ers to some extent with James Harden about what they do with those gentlemen. Neither Dame nor James Harden is going to lose money and not show up. They're going to show up, and then they're going to make the team make a decision. And now the decision in some ways is made for you, which makes things weird. Probably weirder for Philly because of the animosity than Dame, where it's just like clearly doesn't want to be on the team, but is still kind of a nice fellow for the most part, letting other people do the dirty work. So is this a good idea? I don't know. I think no. The spirit of it is good. I hated the tanking seasons of the last 2 years. The last 11 games last year, I hated it. I thought it was insulting to the sport. Pulling Shaedon Sharpe in a game that you need to lose with 8 minutes left, pulling a 19-year-old out of an NBA game because you need to lose, that sucks. And it wouldn't be covered by this rule. Sitting Shaedon Sharpe against the Spurs because you need to lose sucks. It sucks. Benching Skylar Mays because he's been too good of a backup point guard because you absolutely have to lose stinks. It stinks. But it was the right thing for the Blazers to do. They were doing the right thing. It was like straight up insulting to the sport. But the correct play. And these rules don't address that. What they address is like the Clippers can't rest Kawhi Leonard and Paul George on the same night because they want them to play on TNT. The Celtics have to play Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum a bunch of games. It doesn't even apply to the Knicks, right? Because Jalen Brunson didn't make the All-Star team. So it's like Julius Randle can sit all he wants or whatever. But it just doesn't affect enough teams for it to be impactful for me, meaningful for me, in terms of like getting where they want to go. They say I do not like the 65-game threshold, but when you set the 65-game threshold and then say, well, actually you do have to play those other 17 games because we're basically going to force you to, and this is to me, this is the problem. It incentivizes teams to make up injury stuff, and that's dicey. That's people's that's people's bodies and careers and all that stuff. And I do not think a precedent where adding a guy to an injury report early in the week, calf soreness, so he can sit out Friday, calf soreness. That's the way you skirt it, right? That's the way you skirt it, is that he's on the injury report and questionable for the first couple games. Yeah, he's going to play through it, and then it flares up. He's not going to play this day, even though you already had that earmarked as a rest day, right? I would rather teams just rest guys. Also, I think there's a big part of this, and I think this is sort of something that all sports leagues will have to deal with, is gambling. People who gamble on the games and people who set the lines on the games, they want clarity about who's going to play. And last minute scratches happen all the time in the NBA, and last minute rest days and things like that. They want clarity about, listen, well, no matter what, the Clippers have to play Kawhi and Paul George. No matter what, Anthony Davis and LeBron James have to play in this game. So therefore, you know where to set the betting odds. You know all of the gambling things. Like obviously, my podcast has involved with sports gambling to some extent, so I'm not like condemning the whole idea, but there's a real impact on that that I think is just like a part of the world. For better or for worse, is a part of the scene of sports now in North America. So is this a good idea? Probably. Is it impactful enough to change things? No, I do not think it materially changes anything except for April basketball. I really think that's the thing that's going to change. Might change a little bit Damian Lillard, like one very specific instance, but it's not going to change much across the league, except for maybe better TNT games, right? I want to say this again. I think it would be better if the NBA season was more meaningful. I do not think these rules make it more meaningful, but having guys play every night is a good step in the right direction for casual fans. For the cynical basketball sickos like me, I'm going to watch the games anyways. It doesn't necessarily pass the smell test for me. Okay, I promised you some news. This is kind of non-news, why I'm bearing it at the end of the episode. Thanks for listening. You're at the 27-minute mark here. The Board of Governors meeting was today. After the Board of Governors meeting, which is the NBA owners meet, Adam Silver does a press conference, and the national media members go and ask him questions, and he was asked questions about a potential sale of the Blazers. And basically what he said is that there's nothing imminent, and he won't compel a forced sale, which is no news. No news is no news. It is notable that Adam Silver, who once was saying last year at this time, we would like that situation to take care of itself, has changed his tune and is no longer saying, hey, like we want this to be taken care of. He is echoing the statements from the Blazers' current ownership, the Allen estate, the Allen Trust, is that it's one of the largest trusts in probably the world, certainly in the United States. It's incredibly complicated. There's a lot of things to sort of unpack and figure out, and that might take a long period of time. And that in the meantime, Jody Allen as the trustee, as the exactor of the trust, and he didn't mention him, but Bert Kold, the dude basically running the team, in terms of business decisions, they're doing a good job. And so he's not going to compel them to sell. He's willing for them to figure out what they need to figure out in terms of sorting out the estate, and once they sort out the estate, then the sale will happen. The most likely scenario is that the Blazers will be sold after the new television deal is negotiated. They'll get a boost from the revenue or a boost from money that comes from the new media rights deal. I don't think they'll be able to hang on till expansion, because I think that's a further timeline. And you straight up, I think Bert Kold likes running the Blazers, and I think he wants to keep doing it. And so they don't want to sell, and the league's not going to compel them to sell, so it's not happening. There's your news. Also, if Phil Knight wants to buy the Blazers, pony up. Spend way too much money doing it. Buy them for $7 billion. You think they'd balk at $7 billion? I don't. The Hornets just sold for a valuation of $3 billion. Charlotte Hornets just sold. MJ sold for the $3 billion valuation. Blazers got to be worth more than that. Hornets have not had nearly the success. I don't believe they have as strong of a fan base, although it's a much larger city. But I don't think they penetrate the market in the same way the Blazers do. Blazers got to be worth like what, 3.5? Just like back of the napkin. We're back on the napkin. Your boy's been on the napkin all week. I'm on the napkin. I'm saying $3.5 billion. Double it, Phil Knight. You want to buy the team? Double it. They're not gonna sell. Allen State doesn't want to sell. League's not gonna make you sell. You want the team? Pay a crazy figure. That's capitalism, right? Isn't that how this works? All right, that is it for today's show and for shows this week. Next week, September 18th, we're back in action 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, wherever you get podcasts. From the middle of September until the end of July, every single day of the week, a Locked On Blazers, a weekday rather, every single weekday, a Locked On Blazers episode. Nobody else doing this. So that isn't to say that I'm better, but I'm unique. We're going to have, as we get into the season and things get going and it isn't the off season, back to having more guests more regularly. We'll cover the team as closely as anybody does. So do me a favor. You made it here. It's middle September. You've listened to a half hour of a Portland Trailblazers podcast. You like this team. You might not love the show. I hope you love the show. If you do love the show, I appreciate you. I love you right back. Tell your friends about it. That's the way podcasts grow, right? Some of it is the magic of the YouTube algorithm. So YouTube, if you're listening, hook your boy up. But like realistically, the way that shows grow is that you, a trusted fan, and somebody trusts you and trusts you as their Blazer fan friend. Tell them about the show. Say, hey, you listen to Locked On Blazers? I really like it. Check it out. It's available on all platforms and also on YouTube. Word of mouth is how this grows. So as we head into the season, if you're listening this far, do me a favor, tell one friend. Tell one friend, and then come back next week, and we'll do 5 more of these, and we'll do 5 more of these for 7 months. Get excited. It's actually more than that. It's like 10 months. 10 months, 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Tell your pals. I appreciate you. I'll talk to you soon.